Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of Sipping Tea with Stacy T. I am Stacy. Thank you for gracing me with your presence today. Really excited to get into this conversation. Gonna let you all come on in. I'm curious about the sound because it's hot and the AC will indeed be running. So I'm really curious about how it's sounding to you all. Gonna let you guys come in as you are. For those of you who have never been here before, welcome. For those of you who've been here before, hey. Today's tea will be the Charbrew English breakfast tea. So this is the tea that I will be having today. And that is it. Let's see. Again, obviously I've had English breakfast tea before, but I've never had the Charbrew English breakfast tea. For those of you who have been around, I have tried some of the Charbrew stuff. You know, everybody has different things that they enjoy, so you know, a little bit different for everyone. But let's see what this one is like. So again, for those of you who are just coming in, this is the tea of the day, Charbrew. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their Saturday thus far. Not sure if you've gotten out of the house. Hey Cheryl, hey Tiffany. But yeah, I have not. If you know anything about me, I do not enjoy hot weather. So we're about to have a heat wave over here. They're talking about it might be 100 some odd degrees, and that's just like the actual temperature. They're not even talking about like the heat index, which obviously makes it humid and nasty and all the good things. So we shall see what it all boils down to, but it is what it is. I know some of you are loving, good afternoon. I know some of you love that hot weather. I hate sweating and I am a sweater. So some of you that are not, you're like, what is the big deal? I love it. It's warm. It's vibrant. Everybody's outside. Not everybody. Because me, I stay inside for most of the summer. So, all right. So today's topic, and again, wow, we're on 19, right? One more topic, one more episode until 20. And I honestly cannot believe it. Cannot believe it. I know it sounds repetitive, and then I'll give you a sneak into what I have going on. Something that I feel like was dropped in my spirit, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to share that with you at the end of this. I don't think I've said it yet, so I'm going to share that with you all at the end of this. So remind me if we get to the end of the episode and I haven't said it yet. I'm excited because, you know, when I started this, I honestly really didn't even know what I was going to be getting out of it. I knew like what my topic or topics would be, the first few, but I didn't know that I was going to be getting so much out of this for me as well. And I think that's why God wanted me to do this, and how I've been wanting to do it or saying that was going to do it for a few years and hadn't quite done it yet. So timing, you know, his timing is perfect. And I feel like me, you know, being unemployed, though that's never ideal for anyone, right? To not have income coming in. But what I will say is I feel like this time there's a lot going to be happening in my life. So I'm excited. A lot of good things. Let me be clear. You have to be clear. You have to be clear with these things. A lot of positive things are coming down the pike for me. And so it just makes me excited. It makes me excited about what the next things that are going to be happening and what God is going to be doing for me and with me and in me and through me and all the good things. So with that, I'm going to actually try to take it is too hot. So no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that. I like my taste buds. So today's topic is the gift of goodbye. And, you know, it's interesting. I was, you know, looking at some videos. I try to look at some of the people that, you know, have different topics on just to see if anything resonates with me. And oftentimes I'm just like literally just looking through, whether it be TikTok or, you know, watching a podcast or what have you. And, you know, somebody kept talking about goodbye and they kept saying it. And as I, you know, kept listening to it, I'm like, man, some people are really good at this. Some people are really good at like, peace, I'm out, adios, arrivederci, ciao, right? They're really good at it. And then there are some people that are just not good at that. And there's a variety of reasons why goodbye could be a positive thing, right? But there's also goodbye that I feel, can be really challenging. It can be really hard on people. And quite frankly, you don't necessarily, you don't necessarily have control over it, right? So sometimes goodbye happens that you actually start. You're the one who says, okay, this friendship doesn't suit me or doesn't serve me anymore, or it's toxic, I'm in a bad relationship. And so you might be the person that says, I need to stop this, I need to put an end to this. So that's one thing. But I find often when you don't have control over the situation and you don't have control over something ending, it can make it a lot more challenging, even if it's a positive thing, right? Even if it's positive. So let's start off by, like I do with every single episode, and start talking about me as a kid. And obviously throughout your life you have goodbyes. You're not going to make it through life without having to say goodbye to someone or end something. So goodbye is just really closure. It's an ending, and we're going to talk about that word closure, because that can be a hard thing, a really challenging thing. But as a kid, there were definitely things that I wasn't prepared to say goodbye to. And there are a variety of different changes that happen as you grow up. And when you're a kid, you don't have a lot of control over your goodbyes, because let's say, for example, one concrete example, when I started going to church, I started to go to church in Boston. And that was where my family went to church. That was our thing. And then we decided to go to a different church, a church that was closer to where we live, which is the same church that I'm attending to this day, right? But that initial shift was not something that I controlled. So the goodbye, the ending of that relationship in Boston, I had no way of managing. I had no way of saying, hey, this doesn't suit me, or I don't want to do this. And it wasn't, I could have said, I don't want to do this, I don't want to leave, but that would have not changed the end result, which was that my family was not going to be going to that church any longer, right? And there are a whole host of situations that happen like that. One of them, and I think I've mentioned it on, and I don't know if I've mentioned it in great detail, but one of the things that was probably most challenging to me are two different goodbyes. One of them was a goodbye to who was my initial first best friend, I guess you could call her. And that was challenging, because I didn't have control over that. And I really, quite frankly, in the moment, didn't understand what was happening fully. I kind of had some semblance, but I didn't really fully get it. I didn't fully understand why this friendship that we had, had since we were little kids, like probably toddlers, why this relationship was now like over. And that was really, really hard for me. Very, very hard. Because one of the things that I've noticed about myself now, this is me jumping to Stacy as an adult, is I have a hard time with change, like a very difficult time with it. In some manners, I think many people are, but I recognize that in so many ways I'm a creature of habit. And so I like the stability of that. I like how that makes me feel. I wouldn't be able to, articulate that as a kid. And I don't really know where that came from. I feel like that comes from, something, because there are some kids and some adults that are constantly taking risk, daredevils, that type of thing. I would not call myself that at all, by any metric, though people might say that, because I didn't go skydiving. What is it called? When you go up parasailing. I've done parasailing, and people probably would think that was really adventurous. But that's about as much as as I go to that degree. But as a kid, like I said, this first friendship ending was really challenging for me. It was really hard, because what it did is put into this place, and I didn't recognize it at the time, but I felt like I wasn't good enough. So there was some reason that you preferred this other person to me. Now, I know there was lots of things in that. Race did played a part in that. And that was just like, not necessarily not liking me because of my race, but not knowing how to navigate, adults that might have something to say, or situations that, may have been awkward or challenging. And as a kid, maybe not having the tools or desire to deal with those things. So that was challenging for me. But I think also, you know, the thing that I would say was challenging was, and this is as a, you know, young kid, was, you know, leaving our family home. You know, for me, you know, obviously that happened probably when I was about 16, I think. I was about 16 years old. And so, you know, there's lots of lots of things that happened in between, you know, me being a real little kid and me being 16 and us leaving our home. But what I would say is it literally rocked my understanding of stability. So I'm having to say goodbye to everything that I've known, the neighborhood, the neighbors, I mean, just everything, like, you know, what you know about living in your home, the coming home from school, like all those things. That foundation was entirely shifted for me. And so what I recognize now, again, jumping to Stacey as an adult, is that impacted how much stability means to me. And there's a reason why I'm driving this home. Because again, when you have these foundational moments, they do impact the decisions and the choices and what have you that you do make, right? And so as I was this kid and now being challenged in this new way with, you know, trying to figure out housing and again, everything just being kind of upended, it was a huge shift and a huge marker in what I would look at as goodbyes and how they made me feel and all of that. One of the things, and I had mentioned this earlier, was the term closure, and I want you to hold on to that again, because there are some things that you're going to go through. There are some goodbyes that you're just not going to get closure. And when something happens that you can't control, oftentimes that is the case, right? That is the case. And I feel like looking back on that young Stacey, the need for closure, I think, was created in the context of those goodbyes that I was just mentioning. The goodbye of that friendship, the goodbye of my first home, right? Those things, those challenges impacted how I kind of respond to separation, how I respond to things ending, how I respond to and again, this does not matter if it's a good reason or a bad reason. Goodbye can be challenging, right? And so that's something that I definitely recognize that was an early kind of I think I said landmark. It is a pain point for me. All right, so I'm gonna try this tea again. For those of you who just came in, hey Al, I see you just snuck on in. It's the Char Brew. Oop, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Char Brew English breakfast tea. And as I mentioned, I do have my air conditioner on and it does switch cycles, so please do let me know if you're having a difficult time hearing me or if it's impacting the sound of my voice or any of that. It's actually not bad. So I think of the English breakfast teas, or I'm sorry, of the Char Brew ones, because I've tried a whole group of them. I've tried the Earl Grey, I tried the Moroccan Mint. The only one I didn't try was the chamomile and lemongrass, because that's like really herbal and I don't want to have a headache. So I didn't do that one. But this is probably my favorite one of them. And not sure what was different. I mean, English breakfast tea is like a mild tea in general, so that's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, so good job, Char Brew, on that one. All right, so as I said, you know, going in through that childhood lens of, you know, things closing and closure. The sound is fine. Thank you. Excellent. You know, the thing I would say about, you know, the younger years and having that, the separation and the ending and the closure, again, both of those, for me, both of those times, I didn't have any control over the things ending. So I didn't have the goodbye. I was told goodbye too, right? You know, if you, as you date, you know, people, I mean, there's all sorts of stupid things that people say, but it's like, you end the relationship first so that you have control and da 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 da. Like, if you cared about the person, regardless of who ends it, it is painful. It's hard and it's painful. The difference would be that you had already prepared for your goodbye, And there are some goodbyes that you can absolutely prepare for, and then there's others that you can't. You know, so still staying in high school. So like I said, I was about 16 years old when that incident happened. Still navigating all the things that a regular teenager that's going through regular stuff goes through. Trying to be accepted, wanting to fit in, blah, blah, blah. And I really felt like, and I'm sure many people have felt this way, I felt like I fit in really nowhere. I really felt like, even though people outwardly would probably not see that, I was like, you know, who's my group? You know, who are my people? And so I did, you know, I was involved in a lot of different groups. You know, I was in musicals, I did track, I did, you know, I was a peer leader, I was on the literary magazine, you know, so I did a lot of different types of things, but it's funny looking back and you see all these people like, oh, this was my group and we hung out and did this. I didn't have that. I didn't have any of those types of experiences or memories from high school. And so I remember, like, you know, preparing to want to go to college and really being a little bit nervous about that, because even though high school wasn't like the best experience for me, it wasn't horrible, right? But it wasn't the best experience for me. I still thought about the goodbye that I was going to have to, you know, forge into this new, like, you know, group of people, this new experience, this whole new thing, and not being able to control my, I would say my anxiety surrounding that. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if these people are gonna like me, I don't know what they're gonna be like, I don't know where they were raised. I had been so kind of insulated from, you know, external things. I didn't really pay attention. We didn't even have cable TV, right? So there was not like a lot of exposure. You know, I remember people in school being like, oh, I watched this on MTV and BET. I was like, what is that? Like, we didn't have any of that, right? And so I remember feeling very insulated and having to say goodbye to even that, even though it wasn't the best situation. And I've told you guys, you know, my guidance counselor didn't think I could get into the school that I ended up graduating from. And there were lots of things, you know, things involving race, because again, I grew up in a predominantly white area. So there was a lot of things that people would be like, man, you must have been like, see you later, bye, I'm out. And I wasn't. You know, I mean, I did want to have something new. I did want to be around different types of people. That much I knew, but I was still petrified. What does that mean? I have to say goodbye to everything that I've known and step out into something new. And there are some people, like I said, that have the gift of goodbye. They have that, and they're like, all right, it's been real. Thank you guys so much for all this. And it's been real, and I'm out. Right? They have that ability. And some will say, well, that's because they've never really connected. I don't know that that's true. I think there are just some people that are good at some things, right? You know, some of you may be good at, you know, motivating people or mentoring people, or some of you might be great cooks, or, you know, whatever, right? Everybody has their thing that they excel in. And so they might just be the person that excels in closing out a chapter and opening a new one. And so now I'm going from, and I remember distinctly the feeling of forging into and saying goodbye to that old life. Felt like I did it the day that I stepped into my dorm room. That was the day of saying goodbye to, like, old Stacy, you know, suburban Stacy, because even though, like, the area that I was in was it looked very suburban. I went to Boston College, so, you know, you have a very urban area within access, even though our actual campus was not in Boston proper, right? It's not like in downtown Boston, like BU is more in the urban parts of the area. And so in any event, I remember, you know, walking in and trying to feel confident and saying, you know what, Stacy, this is a new chapter. You're going to have new experiences, meet new people. And I remember feeling nauseous as I was trying to have this conversation with myself, right? But even though I knew this was a positive chapter, you know, going to college, having those experiences, I knew that those things would be positive. That does not mean I was really ready to say goodbye to everything I had known. But it didn't matter, because that chapter had closed. Regardless of me holding on to it with a vice grip, it was already closed. So I want to know, for any of you, do you feel like there have been chapters in your younger days that you held on to really tightly? So maybe you didn't really want to grow up. Maybe you had a hard time letting go of a childhood friendship, or any of those things. I'm just curious. And please feel free to put those in the chat while I take another sip. You guys know that I actually like this if I'm taking this many sips, because you guys have seen me. For those of you who've been around, I'm like, but this time it's actually pretty good. So while you guys are writing your childhood things that might have been challenging for you to let go, I'm going to continue on into Stacy now in college. You know, the interesting thing is, I feel like in college there were a group of people that helped me to navigate my goodbyes, right? I remember the first person that I met, her name was Sharia, first person that I met at school, and God bless her, because without her helping me to navigate the goodbye, like that transition from the younger Stacy to the Stacy that was now in college and was about to have all these new experiences, it would have been rough. It would have absolutely been 100% rougher without her helping me to navigate this. And when I think about just even how she was she grew up in Boston, so for her navigating like the tea and all the things, just even how she was able to deal with different types of people, I think was paramount to her living in the city and having a bunch of different experiences that I had yet to have, right? And so she was able to help me navigate closing and being more confident to walk into this new chapter. So she was my aid to goodbye. So automatically you're seeing that I was not good at this. Like, this is not a gift that I had. And I am curious, do any of you feel like you have the gift of goodbye? And don't just say it now because you're like, yeah, I think I have it. But do you literally think you're like, okay, one chapter ended, it's fine, it is what it is, and I'm just going to keep it pushing? Because I am really curious about that. And if you do have the gift of goodbye, I have a question for you. But so as I was moving into navigating that first year, that freshman year, there were so many goodbyes that I had. Goodbye to, like, literally just even interacting with people, the ways that I interacted with people. I hadn't recognized it, but I felt like there was so much of me, and this may be just normal childhood, but the reality is I don't think I ever really felt confident in just speaking. Like, it's not that I'm trying to figure out exactly how to word this. So it's not that I felt that I couldn't like actually open my mouth and talk, right? So I'm not saying that, but like speaking from like a real, what I think, how I see the world, the things that bother me, I don't think I even tapped into that until I got into college. A small group of friends who used to go to Duncan before school together. You did have a small group of friends. That is awesome. I was like looking back on it, and I talked to people in school, but there was nobody that, like, I didn't hang out with anybody. I didn't have any of that. So it was really, I love that people had that. I love that people had the navigating, that together. But I'm curious, because you had that small group of friends, did it make the going to college and separating from them, did it make it more challenging? Because I didn't have that, I feel like I didn't yearn for that. Like, I didn't miss that. But I also felt like, I don't know, I felt like, I don't need to even really, like, get a group of friends, because I didn't walk in with that. I didn't feel like I needed to, like, oh, let me, like, try to figure out who my tribe is right away. Like, there was no desire to do that. I almost, like, think I walked in thinking, you know what, I'm going to be a loner. I'm going to be here. I'm going to have some cool experiences, maybe interact with some people. But there was no, like, desire that I was like, I have to find somebody. I have to find these group of people. I mean, I'm glad that Sharia found me, because I would have starved to death. because I was not trying to leave my dorm room by myself, which is just, it's so funny just looking back on it, because that would be a non-issue now, but that person had not said goodbye to a lot of things that I have since then. So, you know, moving into, you know, the later, as things started to progress in school, it was interesting because I think right away, there were many of us that just automatically kind of glued ourselves together. And it partially is, I'm sure, because we're all coming into a new space and we're just trying to like not feel like we're navigating it alone. Even though I wasn't like trying to, you know, have a group per se, I also didn't want to like, you know, be the outcast either, right? So I think there was a definite like from the beginning, and there were two campuses. Our campus was like further away. It was only freshmen, and then there was a campus that was on the main, attached to the main campus, that was freshmen and a little bit. And so I was on the freshman separated campus. So oftentimes we had our own way of doing things. We, you know, we had our own dining hall, Stewart Dining, and we did our own thing, right? So we were the Newton kids. And then there were the other kids that were on the main campus. And even sometimes those interactions were different because it was like literally two different worlds within the same college. I remember one of the things that I saw from freshman to sophomore year, because again, freshman year, we're all on this kind of insulated. Again, I went from insulated home in another insulated environment. And then I remember distinctly sophomore year, we all got spread apart. We all got, you know, this place, some people are going to this place. And so as we're now spread apart, we stop like hanging out. And we start getting a little bit more cliquey and a lot more divided. So I remember that feeling of, it felt like a series of goodbyes. I went from like everybody hanging and everybody chatting and spending time and going to the dining halls and all that. It went from that feeling to literally a tiny group of people. And for me, I could say it wasn't intentional. I didn't intend for it to be like that. But it ended up being, obviously, well, for those of you who don't know, West Indian, Bayesian American. And so it ended up being a bunch of West Indian girls that we ended up hanging out from all different, a lot of Bayesian, some Jamaican, and then some just from like, you know, areas where there were a lot of West Indian people, and that's who they hung around at home. So that became our small group. So immediately I was saying a bunch of goodbyes that I didn't have control over, because even when I would sometimes say, hey, do you want to do this? Oh, no, I'm doing this with such and such. And one thing about me, I was like, oh, okay, you don't have to tell me twice. Like, I asked you, you don't want to hang out, we're good. That was definitely my mentality then. I didn't take into account that people have stuff going on, because why would I was a child? Right? So, but the reality was I was like, okay, so those goodbyes happened organically. And because I still had something to take the sting away from those goodbyes, so I still had a group of people, I don't think I recognized it as much. But I will tell you, again, fast forwarding to Stacy of now, I will tell you, it was interesting looking at how we came back together for one of our reunions. And the interesting thing was, again, you would see the groups of people, and even in the reunion, I remember reaching out to the group of people that I hung out with and ensuring that at least a few of them would be there, because I thought it might be awkward. And not because I have any, you know, negative feeling to anyone, but I felt like, you know, for me, it was a reminder that people had said goodbye to a relationship, to a closer relationship with me. And I didn't really know the why. I did find out some things after the fact, you know, rumors and lies and the whole bit from some foolishness. And that was interesting to find out. But in the moment, you don't know, you know, the why. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. You know, things happen. The other thing that was interesting to me is when I look back on that time, as I told you, when I was a child, I didn't have control over those goodbyes. Those goodbyes just happened. And, you know, moving forward, when I was in college, I recognized that I was okay with goodbyes. Like, I didn't cling to people, didn't need it. I was like, all right, bye. Like, I was fine with it. And I think a part of that was related to the fact that goodbyes were a part of what I had accepted as happening. And so when I got into college a little bit further in, right, and people are now disconnecting, I was okay. Because I was like, okay, this happens. Again, that's an interesting switch from me being, you know, horrified by people disconnecting or things ending or goodbyes. Let's see, I'm missing stuff. Sorry about that. Saying goodbye to my elementary, who had a huge impact on my life after being adopted, but I would stay in contact to this day. That's awesome. That is awesome. And that had to have been a challenging goodbye. That had to have been very challenging, because that was probably the first place, you know, thinking about, you know, the process of being adopted and whatnot, the first thing that was like a stable thing, and you knew the people and all the experiences, and plus it's a positive reminder of a good time for you, right? A good time in your life, in your childhood. So saying goodbye to those things can be absolutely 100% challenging, and sometimes even triggering. I don't think I thought about it at all. Just met one friend that was more outgoing and started meeting people from the state she grew up in and formed friendships from there. Yeah, that is very, I mean, that's basically what I explained, you know, with Sharia and meeting her. And she knew other people from Boston, and then we started meeting like people from New York. And the benefit, again, of the way that, excuse me, my eye, the benefit of that was that the dorm that I lived on or in was that it was on a freshman only campus. And so we literally, I mean, it was interesting because it's a freshman campus and they have the law school on the same campus, but we literally did not interact with those people. I don't even know how we always felt separate from them. But the reality is we had that cocoon of protection and the ability to get to know each other. And so I did get to meet a lot of people because we were on that campus. But again, as I said, as soon as we sophomore year went onto the main campus and people got split up, it was an interesting example of how goodbyes happen that you're not necessarily prepared for or you're not even thinking about. They just happen. And so that was challenging for me. So then you move into, you know, and for me, as time went on, the goodbyes kind of increased, and then it kind of stabilized. I would say, you know, junior into senior year, it stabilized. I think everybody kind of knew who their group was, and it wasn't intentional for me because I'm like, I talk to everybody and hang out if people wanted to hang out, but that just wasn't really how it turned out to be. And then you know, now for me, that's when I kind of started more so dating, and I'm laughing because that in itself was a whole process. But you know, I started dating more at about that time, and I dated a little bit before that, but now this is like when I start to feel a bit more confident in myself, and you know, and so that was like the natural progression. But the interesting thing was, you know, I didn't recognize in, you know, saying that I was going to be dating people that for some of my friends that meant that I was going to be saying goodbye to time with them. And for some of them, well, I wouldn't say for some of them, for at least one or two of them, it became an issue. It became an issue because, you know, sometimes, and this is not always the case, but sometimes people want you to be in the same situation that they're in. And it's not to say that they're miserable, but they, you know, in the space that they're in, they want you to be, you know, if they're single, they want you to be single. If they're hanging out all the time, they want you to be hanging out all the time. And that cannot always be the case. I mean, everybody does have their own life and their own circumstances. And so I did recognize that did force a goodbye or two. But the other thing that happened, which was, you know, really interesting, was in dating people, you know, I was on dating websites and all that jazz, but a lot of the people that I met were like through knowing somebody else or that type of thing. But I was on dating sites, and one of the things that I recognized was it was a goodbye to some of my privacy, because some of the people that I was dating, other people that I found out were dating too, and I was like, oh no. This is not it. This is definitely not it. I'm not looking for that at all. Let's see if I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, I'm not missing anything. But yeah, that was interesting. But the other thing that for me was really challenging was and this is just kind of an aside of, like, you know, dating and what can happen, and one of the goodbyes that you can say to is your privacy, right? I was dating this one guy, and my friends, you know, were dating, and I had like I said, a small group of girlfriends, and this one girl had broken up with this guy, and here I go trying to be nice to this guy. I felt like, because she was just like we're done, like, stop calling me, like, it was one of those type of situations, because back in the day females could do that stuff. Now if you do that stuff, it don't work out like that. But back in the day, not to say we should have done those things, but you could have done those things, right? So she did one of those type of beat it get lost type of situations, and I was trying to be nice because the dude looked heartbroken, right? Well, I should have just mind my own business and not been nice to this dude, because come to find out, he ended up stalking me, right? So talk about goodbye. Like, I felt like goodbye to my safety, goodbye to, you know, any measure of privacy. And I remember, you know, calling the police department on the campus and telling them what was going on, and their resolution was, you know, you should walk in a group of people. Now, I'm telling you now that it was this dude that was stalking me, but I didn't know initially. I had no idea. Like, they were leaving me crazy messages, doing all the most, right? But I had no idea who this person was. And their idea was walking a group of people. I'm like, well, I don't know who he is, so how's that gonna work? Right? Long and short, God protected me. We found out who it was, and they dealt with it. I don't think he even got into real trouble, but that was the situation, right? So, you know, I wasn't expecting to be doing something positive, dating and being nice to someone, and I wasn't expecting from that to be, you know, saying goodbye to my safety and my feelings of being able to walk on campus by myself and all that good stuff. So it's just to tell you that sometimes, even in positive things that you're doing, in positive situations, goodbyes still occur. There's no way to get away from or evade a goodbye. So now let's move forward. And, you know, one of the things that for me was, you know, or is challenging, is that a goodbye that none of us can avoid is death, right? And so my father passed away when I was a junior, about to go into senior year. And so it was like basically the summer, around the summer. And that was a very challenging experience. Because, you know, when someone passes away, obviously it is final, right? It's very different from a goodbye that you're choosing, right? You're ending a friendship or relationship, or leaving a job for that matter. You know, leaving employment is a goodbye, right? You say goodbye to all your colleagues and all that stuff. Leaving a program, all those things are goodbyes, and you kind of control them. Or if the program closes or if you get laid off, you don't necessarily control them, but you have the ability to still reach out to people, connect with people, so on and so forth. But when somebody passes away, you do not have that control, right? You do not have that capability. You literally are just forced to enter into a permanent 100% goodbye. And that was really challenging because, you know, when somebody passed away, and like I said, it was my father. So, you know, my father and I will say, had a challenging relationship. But even in having a challenging relationship, you still have, you know, lost a parent. You still have lost somebody who helped to create you and bring you into the world, right? So it's very difficult. And, you know, there are often things that you look at and you're like, man, I'm never going to get that. I'm never going to have that experience. And that is challenging. Sorry. That is challenging. But the reality of it is, you know, we can't control every part of our lives. There are going to be things in our lives that happen
to us, with us, around us, that we cannot control. And, you know, I remember specifically, excuse me, I remember specifically thinking of all the things that had happened in the past and all the things that would happen in the future. So all the things that happened in the past, when you're experiencing them, are so magnified, right? Arguments or disagreements or things not said or things that should have been said or things that were never said, you know, whatever, right? You can imagine and deal with all of those things. But they tend to be magnified. When you look into the future, you're just thinking about the fact that there's so many things, events, whether it was your father or your mother or your grandmother or an aunt or a friend. You know, I remember when we were in, I don't know if I was still in high school or not, but I might have been in college. But one of the most popular kids in school passed away, and he was such a sweet person, like genuinely sweet to everyone. Like I've never seen that kid get into any type of arguments or not be genuinely, I mean, and that's the thing, genuinely, because we know a lot of fake folk, but genuinely nice. So when you have when you have the ability to look into or live out your, you know, future, and you're recognizing the goodbye still impacts you, right? It doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. It still has an impact. But you could not control it, because you could not control, you know, this person leaving this earth, because unfortunately that's a reality for all of us. We're all going to have that goodbye. But, you know, the challenging thing is, what do you do in a situation where you now have, you know, this goodbye that you don't know what to do with? Because a lot of times it's funny, people will say, I don't care, I'm just gonna goodbye, like when a situation is over, typically in a relationship, right? Goodbye, I'm out. You know, you don't appreciate me, so forget it, bounce, you know, whatever, right? You can do all those antics when you know that the person is still, you know, down the street, a phone call away, an email away, or if you know where they live, you can roll up to their house, right? So all of that is very different than the only place you can roll up to is their gravesite. Right? Very, very different experience. So what is it how do you manage the feelings that are attached to that? Because I've had some people that I've watched, and their good ability to say goodbye, it's unparalleled. They're like, all right, you know, thank you so much. I mentioned this earlier. Thank you so much. It was a great relationship, or it was a great opportunity. You know, I wish you all the best, and they're done. That sounds like they're not having an emotional connection to it, and for some people they don't. They're just like, it is what it is. Life happens. Things are not always going to stay stagnant or stay the same. Change is inevitable, right? Yeah, peace. So there's some people that have the ability to do that. But when somebody has, you know, when a situation has happened, somebody has passed away, there's a ton of emotions now involved in that. And those emotions, that experience is very difficult to just be like, all right, it is what it is, you know, no biggie. Even in, you know, disconnecting from employment. So it's different. And I have left a job before, you know, but I will tell you, even in me leaving, I told you at the beginning, I have definitely recognized I am a creature of habit in many capacities, right? So even me deciding to leave, I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to leave this job. And it was a job I had to leave for my physical health because it was not good. It was not a good situation for me to still remain there. And it was still hard for me because why? I was dedicated to the students. I was dedicated to, you know, completing the mission that I signed on to. I believed in the mission of the organization with helping homeless youth. I mean, I was connected to that, right? But the reality of it was is the time for me to be there was over. It had ended, and I needed to move into this new chapter. But that didn't mean for me that it wasn't difficult. there are so many things for me that are connected to my emotion. I told you guys this before. I'm an emotional person. You saw it a few minutes ago, me trying to control and contain my emotions, right? I'm an emotional person. And I'm okay with that. I've come to understand that that's who I am. And it's not one of those things that's like, that's who I am, accept me. I think that's actually a strength. So that's why I feel like, I'm okay with that. But, there are some situations that you have to walk away from, and there are some situations that even when you want to hold on to them, you still have to say, you know what, this is not serving me or you. It's not serving either of us well, right? And so that's a very real thing. But I want you to be honest about it. This is my thing, right? For some of you, again, you have that gift. Many of us do not. We're very much connected to it. Even when we try to, front, we try to act like it's no big deal. We try to act like whatever somebody's done doesn't impact us, doesn't affect us, all the things, right? I get wanting to do that. I get even trying to walk into a space and trying to be brave as if something doesn't impact you. I get why people do that. But that idea that things don't, like, you don't care. Like, people say, I don't give a crud, right? I just don't care. That can really build up in you. And I don't know if you've ever heard about people, having a hardened heart. I've dealt with people that are just hard, and their heart is from choking down all the hurts. It's from choking down disappointment. It's from choking down pain. It's from choking down the fact that they don't think that people care. And the fact of the matter is, people are more selfish. I've heard so many people, and when you listen to them talk, it's me and mine. What's best for me. I don't care. I'm not sacrificing. You made your choice. I'm going to do what's good for me. That's you. I can't control what it is that you do, but there's such this growth, and for me, it's disgusting and disturbing, of selfishness, that people just don't care about anybody but themselves or their tiny little circle of people. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, give them all of your attention and your love and affection, but guess what? People exist outside of your little bubble, all right? So the reality is, what you think may have been a gift for some people, the gift of goodbye, I feel often was an ability to shut down emotion. Now, I've said this before, even though I'm an emotional person, not everybody is going to get certain emotion out of me. Why? Because sometimes it's done in a way that I can't control it, but I believe it's done to bless people, for people to feel comfortable in sharing their own emotions. But the reality is, some people will use your emotions against you as well, and that doesn't serve you. I feel like, even me being an emotional person is supposed to serve me so that I can also be a blessing to other people, to let them know it's okay to be emotional, it's okay to feel, but it's also okay to say goodbye. It is okay. Sometimes we hold on to things because people have an expectation. Sometimes we hold on to things because people, have already oh, you're gonna be a lawyer and da 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 da. I will not. I mean, so many people felt like I failed. I remember I was going to be a lawyer. That's what I said I was gonna do. That's what I had always said I was gonna do. And when I decided not to do that, people literally looked at me like I was a failure. But I said goodbye to that one part of my life because that wasn't serving me anymore. I decided that I wanted something different for myself. So it's okay to say goodbye to other people's expectations of you. That is a fantastic thing to say goodbye to. It's okay to say goodbye to being held back from things that you did in the past that you've already, said you're sorry for, that you've repented for, that you've moved past. Those things, say goodbye to those things. It's okay to say goodbye to, maybe even a job that you feel like, you're being disrespected or that you're being, taken advantage of, or even a relationship that does those things. It's okay to say goodbye to those things, but I want you to understand one thing that's really important for you to walk away with is you may not get closure. I talked about it at the very beginning. The thing that, you know, you want for people to say, you know, if people have done you wrong, or if you feel like they've wasted your time, or if they've lied to you, there's this need to have like the ending of the story, right? Where they say, you know what, Stacy, I'm sorry that I disregarded your feelings. I'm sorry that I didn't treat you well. I'm sorry that I disrespected you. I'm sorry, whatever, right? Whatever the thing is. And I'm not saying you don't deserve that. 100%. People should be able to articulate and have a conversation and end things, you know, in a way that is healthy, but you're not going to get that from everybody. So that gift of goodbye may have to be you saying to yourself, I'm not going to get that, but I'm still okay. I'm still okay, and I'm going to move forward because I deserve to be happy. I deserve to walk whole. And I deserve for good things to come into my life. And if you're holding on to negative feelings surrounding somebody who didn't give you the gift of goodbye, they didn't give you the gift of closure, you can't hold on to that for dear life. Because what is that doing for you? How is that serving you? How is that moving you forward into all your future real gifts, right? Not the ones of goodbye, but the gifts of hello, the gifts of welcome, the gifts of here, the gifts of abundance. All those things you can only get when sometimes you say the only closure that I'm going to get is by me closing the book, by me closing the chapter. So hopefully this was a good, yes, take care of you. You have to take care of you. So hopefully this was a good conversation about the gift of goodbye. Maybe not exactly what you thought that it was going to be about. Somebody said, is this going to be about saying goodbye to exes? And I have said goodbye to exes, and there are some that I still talk to. But the reality of it is I want to make sure that the gift that you're giving yourself is goodbye to anything that doesn't serve you, anything that's still holding you down or back. The gift of self-doubt, like that. I mean, it's not a gift, but get rid of self-doubt. So any of those things that are no longer serving you, lack of feeling about yourself, or lack of self-worth, or, you know, self-esteem, or feeling accepted or beautiful, or any of the things, right? Because there'll be a bunch of stuff that people give you. When you open the bag, I'm like, you could have saved this. You could have gave me coal and this would have been a better gift, right? So just be aware that you control the gifts that you take in, and the only ones that you want right now are the gifts of hello. That's it. The gifts of goodbye, they can stay where they're at. All right, so I did tell you before I close that I'm going to tell you about something that I'm going to be doing. So next week is going to be my 20th episode of Sipping Tea with Stacy T. Cannot thank you for the reminder. But yes, so it is the 20th episode of Sipping Tea next week. Really excited about that. And it is going to be We All Lived Happily Ever After, or it's I Live Happily Ever After, so that's going to be what it's about. But, drum roll please, I am actually going to be writing a book on my first 20 episodes. I was sitting and literally I felt like God gave it to me that, you know, this whole process has been about me healing, and hopefully it's about you all healing. So, yeah. It's going to be basically healing through sipping tea with Stacy T. So that's, I'm really excited about it. I already started writing the outline for it. So my goal is to have it done before the end of this year and have it available for people for Christmas time, so we can heal going into the new year. So I'm really excited about it. Keep, you know, I will maybe give you guys some sneak peeks of some stuff that's happening. So if you've been a part of this journey, you'll be also in the thank yous. So especially for those of you who have been my tried and true tribe of Sipping Tea with Stacy T, you'll be in the thank yous 100%. Tiffany, you'll be in there because your chapter will be in there. So just really excited, very, very excited. And I just thank you all for your support, your love, and your consistency, because it means the world to me. With that, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and extend to yourself and to me a measure of grace. Look forward to seeing you on the 20th episode. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.